Penn State football. Before I get into a brief Indiana game review, I would like to let everybody know, as you know, I don't typically get into injuries unless they are season-ending injuries. And Noah Cain will be out for the remainder of the 2020 season. And love Noah. So much respect for Noah. He really had an unbelievable offseason and worked really hard for this opportunity. So we met with Noah ahead of time and felt like this was the appropriate thing to do, to give you guys all a heads up. But Noah will be out for the remainder of the 2020 season. Getting into Indiana, I think first and foremost you got to give Indiana credit. They played well and you got to give them credit. They did some good things on Saturday. I think for us, defensively, I thought that's as good as we had defended Indiana over the last couple years when you take the totality of the game, in terms of rushing yards, in terms of pass defense, in terms of pressure in the quarterback and things like that. Obviously the end result is, defensively we got to hold them to one less point than our offense scores. But the totality of our defense, we did some good things, caused a couple turnovers, was able to pressure the quarterback, but we're more successful than we had been defending them over the last couple of years. Thought our defensive ends did a really good job of getting pressure on the quarterback and getting sacks. I thought our secondary and our pass defense was improved, and we were able to defend the run against what we think is a good Big Ten back. We weren't as consistent on offense. I think if you look back over our 6 years here at Penn State, I think we have averaged 4.4 or 4.5 penalties a game. And as a team, I think we had 10, with some of them being on offense. And then turnovers, I think, was the other story of the game. I think we've averaged 1.4 turnovers over the previous 6 seasons, and we had 3 in that game. And doing that on the road in the Big Ten is going to make things really challenging. So we started out with the opening drive, did some good things, went for it on 4th down, was able to get a score on our opening drive, and then we went into a lull with some turnovers and penalties, and then we're able to play better late in the game in the 4th quarter. And then on special teams, we've been pretty consistent in that area as well, kickoffs, punts, and field goals, and we weren't able to do that. So, we really made mistakes that we had not made, and we got to get those things cleaned up. But you got to give Indiana credit, combination of they played well, and we didn't play the way we normally play, our normal style, our winning formula here at Penn State when it comes to penalties and turnovers. So, getting into Ohio State, obviously a tremendous opportunity. Well-respected program nationally and within the Big Ten, coming into Beaver Stadium, a place that we have played extremely well over the last couple of years. Our home record is as good as anybody in the country, and looking forward to the opportunity. Obviously you look at, what they've been able to do offensively with Justin Fields, what they were able to do against Nebraska. They are dynamic at the wide receiver position. They are big and physical on the offensive line. They always seem to have at least 1 or 2 running backs that can hurt you, not only on the perimeter but between the tackles as well. And then I think Justin started out like 17 for 17 or something like that, threw for like 95% in the game, and was able to create some explosive plays, not only with his arm but with his feet as well. Defensively, still a very similar plan, even though they have a new defensive coordinator and Coach Combs. Still a very similar plan. They don't do a lot, but what they do really well. They have enough variations in there to keep you honest, and they're obviously extremely, extremely skilled. And then on special teams, I think they take a similar approach. They're very talented. They get their players in position to make plays. They keep things simple. take somewhat of a conservative approach in some areas, like punt return. But they've been really effective. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge. We look at it as also a tremendous opportunity. We've had some great battles with Ohio State, and we're one of the few teams to beat them over the last couple of years. And I know our staff and our players are motivated for this game this weekend, like we always are. So open it up to questions.
Start with Rich Garcella, Reading Eagle.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. James, there have been a couple instances in 17 and 18 where your first loss of the season, you followed with another loss. And I was just wondering, what did you learn from those experiences on how to bounce back from a tough loss? And what have you seen just in the last couple 36, 48 hours from players?
Yeah, so, obviously, looking at our facility and our team and the people in the Lash building, obviously, on Saturday night and Sunday, there's hurt. Everybody's hurting. And that's understandable and that's natural. But I do think the staff led and our captains led, with the right mentality and approach on Sunday, and we were able to move on from it. So I think we are doing a better job of that. You invest so much that you got to find a way to move on and move on quickly, no matter the results. You got to learn from it. You got to grow from it. And then you got to move on. You got to flush it and move on. And that's whether you were successful or not. And I think we're doing a better job of that. And I think our captains have been a big part of that. And I think the staff has been a big part of it. So Sunday was good. Monday's an off day. And then obviously today's going to be important going out there and practicing. But I think, Rich, obviously, Ohio State's going to be a tremendous challenge. I look at this situation a little bit different than maybe some of those other situations. But I think your point is fair.
Mike Gross, LMP News.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hey, Mike.
Are you, without Noah, are you planning to use maybe 3 running backs? I mean, what's your thinking there? Because the last couple of years you've used multiple guys, and obviously that's ideal. So, but you're talking about true freshmen. So, what are you thinking in that regard?
Yeah, I think Mike, it'll be similar to what we did on Saturday. We played all 3 of those backs on Saturday. Devin got the majority of the carries, but Kevon and Keziah played as well as true freshmen. Obviously, our circumstances have changed, and everybody's dealing with this to a degree. We came into the season with our running back room, considered maybe one of the strongest running backs in the room, and now, at least at this time, we've lost Journey Brown and Noah Cain. So those guys are going to need to step up and be ready to play. We have to create a little bit more explosive plays. That was something that we felt like Journey and Noah were going to bring to the table for us. But this is just the nature of where we're at right now. The combination of injuries and COVID have got us to this point. And, when I talk about COVID, I'm talking about, all of it, Micah Parsons, all the ramifications of that.
Tyler Donahue, Lions 247.
Yeah, James, first opportunity to see Kevon and Keziah in game action Saturday. They look ready for this role, and knowing moving forward, they're going to have to be on the field quite a bit. I'm sure more than you anticipated when preseason began.
Well, I think obviously, although you tell everybody to approach things as if you're going to be the starter, that doesn't always happen. Again, when we got started with this, those guys, if I'm doing my math correctly, I think we're 4th and 5th on the depth chart. So now we're in a situation where they're going to play prominent roles. And we've seen flashes of really good things from them during practice and training camp and meetings and things like that. But we thought we would have a little bit of time to let them gain some experience, maybe in not so big moments and meaningful moments, maybe early on, and let them grow into that. But here's where we are. They're both extremely talented. We have a lot of belief and confidence in them, but experience matters, and we got to speed up that maturation process a little bit for them.
Neil Rudell, Altoona Mirror.
Hey James, wondering if you could discuss the adjustment. Was there an adjustment factor with Kirk in his first game relative to how did the communication in your estimation flow? You guys did have a delay. There would be a little confusion at the end of the game, maybe of what you wanted on the touchdown score. Was there a little bit of an adjustment that you guys are still going through relative to that?
Just, I want to be clear. When you say the confusion, what do you mean by that?
Well, you said that Devin should get as much as he can and get down. It just seemed that was one instance. I'm just asking about the process of the play call and the first time with the new offensive coordinator, how you felt that went, or whether that was a factor either in that play or just generally on Saturday.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear. Yeah. I don't think that was an issue in either of those circumstances. But yeah, I think obviously, whenever you have a new staff and you have some changes that you're still working through those things and getting comfortable. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't think those two circumstances there, played out that way. I think we talked about this a little bit already after the game, but no, I think will we be better in game two, just getting more comfortable with everybody and how Kirk calls a game and how we operate and all those types of things. Yeah, I think that's natural, but I don't think that those two situations played a part in that.
Ben Jones, StateCollege.com.
James, over the years, you've had offenses that have operated pretty quickly, and there have been moments where you wish you could get that 4-minute offense and it hasn't quite come together. Now it seems like you have an offense that can do that 4 to 7 minute, but maybe one game is not enough information, but maybe is not as quick strike. What is the trade-off there between getting better at one thing, but maybe not having that other asset?
Yeah, I think you have to be able to do both, Ben. I think that's the point you're getting to is you're going to have to be explosive. We've lost two of more of the explosive athletes in the country before the season started. Depending on how this whole thing plays out. And then I think the other thing I would say is we have some opportunities for some explosive plays in the running game, in breaking a few more tackles and sustaining a few more blocks. We got to find a way to create more explosive plays in the passing game. That's something that we have to do a good job of. We've done that at times. And then, then we got to be able to get into some formations in obvious running situations and be able to run the clock out. And I do think we're in a position now with what we're doing offensively to be able to do both and do both well. Being explosive in 2020, a lot of it deals with being able to make plays on the perimeter. If you're going to be put in one-on-one situations, you got to be able to make people pay for that. If you get a light box, then you need to be able to create explosive plays there. And then there's going to be times in the game, whether it's 4-minute or whether it's short yardage, that you need to be able to run when everybody in the stadium knows you're going to run. And those are the conversations that I think me and Kirk had, beforehand and since then, and is our objective.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record.
Hey, good afternoon, James. As far as Devin Ford, it was the first time we got a chance to see him as a feature back, so to speak, his biggest playing time. How do you think he did overall for that first big shot? His growth going forward, what's the biggest thing you think he will grow from going forward from that first game?
Yeah, I thought he did some really nice things. I thought his mentality was really good. Obviously, again, there's a difference between being a guy who's rotating in with two other backs and being the guy. And in the Big Ten, very physical conference, very good defenses in our conference, and the style of offense we're running. So I think he did some really good things. His leadership is going to be key with those younger guys as well. But I just think you're going to have to change your mentality. It's one thing when Noah was the starting back and Devin was going to rotate in and be a complementary piece to now being the guy. And I think he'll grow into that. There's no doubt that he has the talent to do that, and there's no doubt that we believe in him. But there is a difference. There is a difference between being the lead dog and a rotational piece.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, James. You referenced this briefly in your opening remarks, but how special has been the competitive nature of your games against Ohio State? And what have the range of emotions been like for you going from like a 2016 victory to a pair of 1-point losses the next 2 years?
Yeah, and I look at the whole spectrum of it. I look at scores that Ohio State puts up against people. I look at some of the scores before we got here, and I look at how our games have gone. And we've found a way to beat them when very few people have, and we have played them to the wire. And sometimes those games to the wire, they're probably the most painful on everybody. The coaching staff, the players, the fans. But I wouldn't trade that. Obviously, we've had an opportunity to win some of those games right down to the wire, and in 1 year we were able to step up and get it done, and other years they were able to. So we're going to continue to build on that, and we look forward to having a tightly contested game on Saturday. But it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. Got a lot of respect for their program. Got a lot of respect, for their history and what they've been able to do. And obviously they're as talented of a roster as maybe any roster in the country.
Travis Johnson, Associated Press.
Hey, James, I know you've been slightly optimistic about Journey's status. I'm just wanted to follow up on that. Is there an expectation for when you could receive word on whether or not his status would change for you guys?
Yeah, as you guys know, with injuries, until we know, for sure that things are finalized for a season, then we don't come out typically and make those types of announcements. We want to protect the information. We want to protect the privacy of the student athlete and our program. So we don't get into those details.
Donnie Collins, Times Tribune.
Hi, James. You guys get a game going on Saturday. You played in front of a crowd with few fans in it. What do you think you'll learn from that experience? And do you think it'll be different at Beaver Stadium where you normally would have had maybe the best home field advantage in the country to have so few fans there this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be different. Obviously, this 2020 in general is different for everybody. I think your point is a good one, that it's magnified for some programs compared to others. Some conferences, compared to other conferences, there's no doubt that this factors in. But once again, this is the reality of it. We've known that this is the reality of it, and we need to embrace it and be ready for it. Our practices will reflect that. Would you love for this community to have a whiteout? Would you love for our fan base to have a whiteout and our players and specifically our seniors? Yes. I think it's one of the things that's special about college football. But again, we're also appreciative of the sacrifices and the compromises that were made to allow us to have a season.
Audrey Snyder, The Athletic.
Good afternoon, James. Different,
Hey, Audrey.
but hello. Typically, the whiteout is obviously a big recruiting weekend for you guys. How does that pose challenges now? Because everybody's dealing with the same thing. You don't have that marquee visit weekend that you normally would.
Yeah, and I think it's magnified for places like Penn State when we're not an easy place to get to unless you're planning to come here. So I think it magnifies it. Obviously when I think we can get people on campus for whether it's the spring game or whether it's a whiteout game, or just get here and be able to interact with our staff and our players and this community. That's been a strong selling point here at Penn State for 100 years. But it's unique. It's different than a lot of places, and it's something that you need to come and experience firsthand. And the people that do usually fall in love. So it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And I think it's what makes this place so special is how different and how unique it is. But also in a time like this, it creates challenges.
Parthu Padre, Center Daily Times.
Hey, Coach, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Parthu?
Doing well. Even in a loss, how significant was it for Pat Freiermuth to break that that record, that tight end's career touchdown record? And do you ever see him kind of taking that moment despite the loss?
Yeah, I think Pat would tell you himself he would trade that record for a different result on Saturday. I think for us, with team success comes individual recognition, and I think that's how our players approach it, and I think that's how the staff approaches it. For us, it's everything we possibly can do to get a win and to be 1-0 each week. And at the end of the season, when people are recognized by the media or by fans or by their peers or coaches, then obviously we want that for them as well. But I think that's what makes football the ultimate team game. Is it's about the success of the whole, and then the individual recognitions are great. Obviously we had a lot of confidence that Pat was going to break that record, just based on his track record, his history.
New Bias Wilborn, Pittsburgh Post Gazette.
New Bias.
All right, we'll move on to Mark Woodward. Go ahead, New Bias. New Bias, we can't hear you. You're breaking up really bad. So we'll move on to Mark Woganrich, SI.com. Wogie?
Hey, James, how are you?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no. As long as I can be heard, too. You discussed just a bit about the whiteout, a bit about the atmosphere. How do you go about maybe recreating that in some way this weekend?
Minute, Mark. We're trying to mute. 2020. For 2020, guys. Just give us a moment. We apologize to you, Mark, and New Bias. Mark, try it again. See if it works now.
Okay, so my question was, is there a way you can go about perhaps trying to replicate, or if not replicate, then at least just maybe reproduce a little bit some of the environment so that the players and the fans, or the players and the families who are there, get at least a sense of what a whiteout is?
Mark, I would make the argument. I think that you want to avoid that. You just want to, this is the reality of what we're in, and embrace it. And as we all know, because there's programs all over the country that are trying to recreate what we have in Beaver Stadium for whiteouts, it's hard to do under normal conditions. So, for us, we're just going to embrace this is what the 2020 season is. we're excited about the opportunities and going to make the most of it.
Elton Hayes. Oh, Elton's not on anymore, so we will move on to Bob Flounders, Penn Live.
Hi, James. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Bob.
How you doing? Thanks for your time.
You too.
I just wanted to ask you about Justin Fields as a runner. I know that in last year's game, I think his ability to extend plays, and he hurt you with some design runs. And just can you address maybe the challenge of maybe limiting that impact of his game? Obviously, he's off to a hot start as a thrower, but I think he really hurt you guys running the ball and extending plays last year.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of his game. I think they try to limit it as much as they can, but it's just naturally, what he does. And I think it's all your point is a good one. It may not even necessarily be the actual runs, but his ability to extend plays with the dynamic receivers that they have. That's challenging. I mean, if you look across college football and now in the NFL, it's similar. It's hard to stop all the different things that offenses are doing now. You got the traditional running game, you got the traditional pass game, and then you got the RPOs, and then you got the design quarterback runs as well. So, it's challenging, and that's why being able to score points on offense and special teams, and being able to create turnovers and limit limit offenses as much as you can. That's 2020 football. So obviously it's going to be a focus point for us this week, and it's going to be a challenge. He's one of the best players in college football.
Nate Bauer, Blue It Illustrated.
Hey, James.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, what have the implications of COVID been on how you staff officials at practice, if at all, and do you feel like that had any impact on Saturday?
Yeah, again, if you look at our history, we've had officials at practices, pretty much routinely through training camp and through the season, with the majority of our practices. And with COVID, here at Penn State, we're not doing that. We usually have a full crew, and we've only had 2 officials at maybe a handful, maybe 5 or 6 practices, where we normally probably would have had 40 practices with officials and getting feedback constantly from them. So does it play a part in it? Possibly. I think it's a fair point. I think it's a fair question. But again, it is what it is, and ultimately I'm responsible to make sure that we play the way we typically play, and all of us have to pay attention to that. Myself, the staff, the players, and make sure that we're taking the feedback and making the adjustments. But I think it's a fair correlation to make based on what we've done in the past, and as you know, every team's different, and every school is different in how they're handling different things. So maybe other programs are still able to do that.
We'll try New Bias Woodburn again.
All right, hope this better this time, guys. Can you hear me now?
Nice. How are you?
Awesome, thank you. Good morning to you, Coach. How tough was it, one, to lose Lakita for that rest of that fourth quarter? And then how tough will it be to replace what he does for a whole half against Ohio State this week?
You said Jesse Luketa?
Yeah, Luketa. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, significant. I watch not only obviously our games and all our cut-ups, but then I watch opponents, and there's a lot of college football players being ejected from plays, and I get it and I support the rule, but I also know there's just some times when the offensive player drops his pads, and I think you guys have heard me say this in the past. There's a point where if you're going to drop your pads as low as the offensive player to make the tackle and to stop them, there's a point where you can't keep your helmet up. It's just, I mean, if you guys sit there and try it in your living room, there just comes a point where you can't keep your head up once you get your pads down that low. So there's some players getting ejected that I think clearly are trying to make the hit with their shoulder, but there's still some contact with the heads. I do see a change in behaviors of college football players trying to make the adjustment in how they're tackling so they don't get ejected. But it's still happening. I heard some announcers this weekend just talking about that is there an argument to go back to a little bit like the face mask penalty where you had a 5-yard face mask and a 15-yard face mask? Because to me, there's a big difference in the targeting penalties as well when somebody truly launches, use the helmet as a weapon, and clear head-to-head contact, and the other ones that happen that technically are still targeting penalties, but it's clearly obvious that the defender was trying to make the hit with his shoulder. So that's hard. I get what we're trying to do. We're trying to protect the game and trying to protect the student athletes, and that's the most important thing. But I think it's also hard, to see some of these defenders get penalized for play that they were really trying to follow the rules. It's difficult. I do think Jesse falls into that category. I think he was trying to, but. I also get it. I think it's obviously magnified this year, especially in the Big Ten, with the amount of games that we have. It's made the penalty even more significant.
Pat Principe, WGAL.
Hey James, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm good. All things considered, Let me ask you a little bit about when you're playing a team the caliber of Ohio State. And I know fast starts are always important, but in your mind, is it important to make a team like that maybe sweat a little bit early or maybe cast some doubt, that they can be beaten in a game? I mean, is it a mindset that you go into a game with trying to do that, even though I know fast starts are always obviously the objective in any game?
Yeah, well, I think again, if you look at our history with them, we've done it a number of ways. We've won late with big plays. We've had early leads, and battled all the way to the last play of the fourth quarter. So I think at the end of the day, to beat this type of opponent, it's not just about a fast start. It's not about finishing strong. You're going to have to play well for 4 quarters. And that's starting and that's finishing and that's everything in between. To beat this type of team, it's not going to be pieces. It's going to be a whole, because I think you would probably agree. We've really done both against this team in the past, and it's worked for us in one instance, and it hasn't got it done in others.
Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports.
James, Graham Mertz at Wisconsin has tested positive a second time, so he'll enter the Big Ten protocol. I just wondered, when that 21-day protocol is presented to you as coaches, what your thoughts were about it, whether it was prudent, whether it was too much, that sort of thing.
Well, I think a couple things. I think there's a couple things, Dennis. There's the Saturday testing, that are guys are getting false positives and missing a game. That's challenging, and not just players, but coaches as well. I think that's a concerning point. And then, like you're saying, the positives and the 21 days that you're out, even though you probably could get all the required testing done in less than that. It's a 21-day minimum. I think we were at a point, as a conference, that our commissioner and our presidents, wanted to make sure that we went above and beyond to keep the student athletes as healthy as we possibly could. And with that, there was going to be some compromises, there was going to be some sacrifices, and there were going to be some circumstances that came about that were hard to swallow at the moment. We had a young man that wasn't able to play this weekend because of a false positive test on Saturday morning, and his dad called and was very upset, and and more upset about his son, just hurting for his son. And we talked it all through, and he understood. It was probably more venting than it was, being upset with what the Big Ten had really decided. It was more just his son's hurting, and I want you to hear it, Coach. So I would just say, as administrators, I don't want to speak for the administration and the presidents, and I don't want to speak for the presidents, but I think the way I understood it, we were just putting health and welfare as the priority, in a way that still gave us a chance to have a season and to try to balance those two topics. And neither one was going to be perfect, but try to balance it the best we possibly could. I hope that answers your question, Dennis.
We have time for two more. We'll start with Tom Van Haren, ESPN.
Hi, James.
Hey, Tom.
I was just curious, now that you've been through a game, what challenges or differences did you notice in terms of communication with the players from the sideline while wearing masks? Was there any differences?
You mean as coaches?
Yeah, coaches communicating to players while wearing a mask, like being able to see someone's mouth move and figure out who's actually talking to you in real time. Were there any challenges that you noticed?
Yeah, well, for me, it was really important. I talked to my entire staff before the game that I wanted people that watched the Penn State football game, not just to be proud of what we put on the field, but I think at Penn State, our fan base, our lettermen, our alumni, they want to be proud of everything they see on the field. So for me, I wanted to make sure that my staff knew from the head coach's perspective that I wanted to be an example of a team that's doing it right. Not the mask that's below the chin the whole game, or not the mask that you pull down to talk. And did that create challenges? Yes. Have we all realized that our hearing is probably not as good as we thought because we're reading lips as well as listening when we talk? Yes. When you're trying to scream something to a player on the field, is it easier to do without the mask on? Yeah. But, I wanted people to watch Penn State football and say, look at their sideline, look at their coaches, look how they're going about it, and they're trying to do it the right way under very challenging circumstances. Now, at the end of the day, is anybody talking about that? No. Everybody's just talking about the results on the field, and I get that. But to me, as the head football coach at Penn State, our goal is to try to do it all and do it the right way. That's in the best interest of our student athletes. That's in the best interest of our staff. Ultimately, I have a responsibility to try to keep everybody healthy and safe. So that's what we're trying to do. And is there problems that come with that? Yes, Tom. But we made that decision that we were willing to make those sacrifices.
Last question to Peter Terpstra, WTAJ.
Hey, Coach. After the long off season and the way you guys lost that first game, do you just expect your guys to be more energized or attentive, from what you've seen this week, with all things considered?
Yeah, what I would tell you, Peter, is I watched the tape. We played hard. It's not like we look back at that game and we didn't play hard. We played hard. We played with passion. We didn't always play smart. Again, with the turnovers and the penalties and things like that. So I think we'll play hard again, and then I think we'll obviously learn from some of the mistakes that we made in week one, and we're going to have to against a really good opponent. But I don't necessarily feel like some of the things that you some of the statements you made in your question are going to show up this week and they weren't there last week. We made mistakes that we typically haven't made, which are the turnovers and the penalties, which we preach all the time. There are things that get you beat since the beginning of time, especially the penalties. The other one is typically explosive plays, and we were able to limit those, but we didn't make enough of them ourselves.
Thank you very much, Coach. Thanks, everybody.